What's going on, Tamers? East here. Recently, the purple hybrid deck has become really popular thanks to some new innovations from the Duskmon and Velgrmon cards. I mentioned in a recent meta report that it has become one of the most played decks right now thanks to its ability to win either through pure aggressiveness or by milling your opponent out of cards. And so after learning to play the deck myself, I thought it would be neat to share this info with all the folks out there. So with that, let's talk about Velgr Loop. So let's dive in and talk about what Velgr Loop actually is, some of the ways you can set it up, how to execute it, and then maybe a couple of ways that you can defend against it if you're the opponent. Regarding the setup, it's actually pretty straightforward. You're only going to need 4 cards. You're going to need the BT2 Mat Tamer, the BT7 Koichi Tamer, the BT18 Duskmon, and then the BT18 Velgrmon. The idea is to basically get these 2 cards into the trash, and then get down one of your Koichi Tamers like so. He's going to let you draw a card and then throw away a card. If you don't have one of those cards already set up, you can toss away the card you need to put there so that you can get set up. And then whenever you get the memory back on your turn, once you have at least 2 memory, you can execute at least 1 rep of the loop. So we'll do something like evolve the Koichi Tamer into Duskmon. This is only a 2-cost evolve because it's a named evolution from Koichi. Duskmon's important effect here, his important role, is to change one of your opponent's Digimon's color or their Tamer's color. So around this time in the game, you'll probably have an opponent who is at least 1 Digimon and 1 Tamer set up. And if they're the same color, you need to change at least one of them. But again, you want to set this up so that you always have the most colors on your opponent's side of the board. And that's because whenever he attacks, you can evolve from the trash for cost -1 into Velgrmon. Now Velgrmon from a Duskmon is a 1-cost evolve, so the -1 from Duskmon makes it 0 cost. The Velgrmon is actually going to play off of the Duskmon's previous effect, where for every different color Digimon your opponent has on the board and different color Tamer, you both discard that many cards. So if they have 1 like red Digimon and 1 blue Tamer, you're both going to discard 2 cards. So you discard 1, mill off the top, and here. Your opponent's going to do the same. Now what's important about that is that for every card that's milled, you and your opponents together, he gets plus 1,000. So again, with 2 different colors on your opponent's side of the board, he's going to get plus 4,000. 2 for your discards, and then 2 for your opponent's discards. And so that typically makes him like an 11,000 DP Digimon, which is pretty likely to survive most security swings. Keep in mind, this swing is typically going to be at your opponent's security. You don't really need to worry about their board so much because Velgrmon's end of attack effect allows you to destroy him, and then you can destroy one of your opponent's lowest level Digimon on the board. And if they only have 1 Digimon, then you just destroy whatever they have. And that's where the second part of this loop comes in. So now with the Velgrmon destroyed, you got a couple of on-deletion effects that are going to happen. We're going to first activate the Koichi Tamer, who's going to give us plus 1 memory. Then we're going to activate the Duskmon's deletion effect, which says we can grab a Tamer from the trash that is 4 costs or lower and just play it. And so we're just going to go back into the trash here, and we're going to grab good old Mat. Now the Mat Tamer here is important because he has the on-play effect that whenever he is played, you can go into your trash and grab 1 Digimon or 1 option card. In this case, we're just going to grab Duskmon again. And now that we have a purple Tamer on the board and we have another Duskmon in hand, you can easily see how you can replicate this loop again, provided you have enough memory. Now you'll notice that I only have 1 memory here, so I typically can't activate the loop again. Also, because the Mat Tamer was played this turn, he also cannot attack. So you have to keep that in mind when your Tamers were played, because that's how many attacks you're going to have on the board. And any Tamers that are played this turn cannot attack again. So now let's imagine, instead of starting my turn with 2, I actually started with 3. Now you can see how this loop kind of gets out of control. I'm going to reset the board very quickly. I'm going to drop the Tamer there. Let's imagine we have at least 1 more Tamer on the board. Actually, you don't need to just only use the BT7 Koichi. We can actually just swap him out for the BT18. Or the reason that this guy is good because he's going to let you pitch a card into the trash, which you're going to need to set up anyway, and he's going to give you memory off it at the start of the turn. So if they just start you off at 2, you've got this guy out, you can throw a card away and then go to 3. Now with 3 memory, you can do quite a bit with this loop. So you go, once again, evolve into Duskmon, draw for evolve. Duskmon's going to change the color. Typically it's going to be 2 colors on the board. He's going to swing, cost -1, evolve into the trash into Velgrmon. This is a 0-cost evolve. That movement there was just for the Duskmon. He's going to mill cards off you and your opponent's decks, typically 2 each. He's going to gain plus 4,000, check a security, and then at the end of the attack, he'll die. You gain a memory, go to 2 from the Koichi Tamer here. The Duskmon's going to let you play down your Mat Tamer, and then the Mat Tamer is going to give you your Duskmon back. Now with the Koichi already set up from the previous turn here, the BT18 version, we're just going to do the whole thing over again. So with 2 memory, go into Koichi, go to Duskmon, draw. This time we're going to attack with Duskmon, and again, do the whole thing over again, right? If they have more colors you can change the colors again. But we're going to evolve into Velgrmon. I'm going to discard. Again, let's imagine it's 2. And that's, again, another 11,000. Keep in mind that Velgrmon does get weaker if you do destroy your opponent's Digimon, so that's something to think about as well, because they have less sources on board for colors. Same thing, we're going to hit security. 11,000. He's going to destroy himself. Oh, sorry. During the attack, the BT-18 Koichi Tamer actually lets you grab a 10 Warrior or Hybrid type Digimon card, or actually not just Digimon, just card from your trash. So if there's something you want to grab, that's maybe like a Duskmon here. That's also okay. Or maybe like the Velgrmon or like a Kaiserleomon. Same thing though. That was 2 cost evolve for the initial Duskmon, the 0 cost evolve for the Velgrmon. So we're at 0 at this point. We do the whole thing over. So destroy this guy. The Duskmon's effect lets us grab a Tamer and play it on the board. We can grab a Koichi if we have one. He's going to let us draw and then drop one. Let's imagine we drop this Koichi into the trash. And then that's basically the whole loop. You can, as long as you have memory, you can keep doing this. 3 means you get 2 reps of the loop. 2 means you get 1 rep of the loop, unless you can find a way to gain memory. Speaking of gaining memory, there are also some really good cards that work well here, and those are 4 copies of Jack Raid. Because Jack Raid checks how many cards you have in the trash, and this entire deck builds trash very quickly by milling cards and discarding cards on your side, you can collect Jack Raids, and if you end up milling one of the Jack Raids, you can just get them back with a Mat Tamer. In addition to Jack Raid, there's also cards like Missed Memory Boost that you can use to trash cards and then draw, and this is going to give you that +2 memory on the delay later on in the game when you need it. And then if you do end up milling something you really need, like a Digimon or a Tamer, you can play something like a Rival's Barrage so that when it's milled, you have a way to get back a card from the trash that you need. Because you have Mat Tamers in this deck, you've also got the Koichi Tamers who also give you plus memory. It's not uncommon to start a turn at 4 with this deck. And even if you don't start a turn at 4, if you start with 3, because you've got all these Jack Raids and Missed Memory Boosts in the deck, you can pretty easily get above 3 pretty commonly. What's really cool about this deck is that as you go into the late game, you actually have a bit more options than the early game. So again, the early game is pretty much all aggressiveness, all aggro, all offense. But in the late game, you know, you've got like a Mat Tamer already set up, you've got like 1 Rival's Barrage down, you've got maybe a Missed Memory Boost out there, start your turn with 3 because of the Mat Tamer. If you want to put on like either huge burst damage or huge amounts of mill, you have the option of using, let's imagine we spend our Rival's Barrage here to get back a Mervamon. Remember this card? Anubismon sure was fun, gang. So imagine you get a Mervamon back to your hand. You can use something like the Missed Memory Boost here to gain 2, go to 5, and then all those Jack Raids I mentioned before, you save them for this moment here, where you know you've got like 20 cards in trash. You gain 2 memory each. You actually don't even need to spend all of these. You can just spend 2 and go to 9. And this lets you just play out the Mervamon for the Digicross of 8. With a Ignite-mon or another Mervamon in trash if you've got one there. Keep in mind, Mervamon does allow you to Digicross from trash, so you don't need to keep this in your hand. You can actually just pitch it if you need it. That's going to put you to 1, but what's nice is she's going to let you play 2 level 4 Digimon. Now, depending on what your opponent's situation looks like, if they have a ton of stuff on board, or if they don't have many cards in deck, you can opt to go for the Velgrmons, who, while they can attack, as they are, they can let you mill your opponent out. So you imagine 2 Velgrmons, your opponent has something like 4 colors on the board, you can just like mill like 8 cards off the top of the deck. Real Apocalypse vibes. Additionally, if you have, for example, a Duskmon in hand, because these can't attack themselves, but they can evolve into Duskmon for a cost of 1, and so now that they've become a Duskmon, they get the inheritance effect of Retaliation, and then they get turned on and gain Rush because of the Mervamon. And then they can attack like that. If you don't want to go that route, you just want to be a bit more aggressive, instead of grabbing Velgrmons, you also have the option of just grabbing like a Kaiserleomon from the Purple Hybrid Engine as well, who does have the Retaliation effect and also destroys level 4 whenever he's played. And so with this, you have the option again of either milling your opponent out, or you can go for, let's imagine this is a second Kaiserleomon, like 3 checks to end the game. Oh yeah, I also forgot Ignite-mon gets your memory back, but you know, who cares? So yeah, super powerful engine, very aggressive, has the options to deal with the opponent's deck if they go late in the game, and as a result, this deck has become incredibly popular in Asia. Like, I think I played it like 3 or 4 times at locals just this week. too many times, to be honest. So now I feel well versed in the deck, even though I just built it like yesterday. And so now, armed with this knowledge, you too can loop like the best of them. So now that I've taught you how to absolutely murder people with the Velgr Loop, let's talk about some ways that you can not be murdered if you're fighting against it. Now, for all of the raw speed and power this deck does have, the answers against it are actually pretty straightforward. As long as you have something that's huge and is a blocker or has some redirection and isn't affected by deletion effects or effects in general, you should be in a pretty decent position. And luckily, the game has no shortage of cards that meet these requirements when you take a look at things like Velgrmon X Antibody. And while him having 3 colors will be a little bit dicey sometimes, as long as you have some inheritance effects or his effect is already turned on, you should be okay. Another great answer here might be the starter deck level 5 Rapidmon, where if you have a green tamer, whenever you play or evolve into him, he can't be deleted by your opponent's effects for a turn. This combined with something like a Velgrmon Ace, who can actually prevent your opponent from evolving their tamers, is very strong. For you folks out there with EX7 cards, if you've got the Shuttle Kazama Tamer paired with the Mother D Reaper, this is also a very straightforward answer as well. Even things like the Ragnarlordmon Ace, who just has invincibility for a turn and also can be a huge fat blocker. With cards like the starter deck Velgrmon, he becomes even more annoying because then he just can't be affected by your opponent's effects during their turn at all, which means he's just an annoying blocker always in the way. One of my personal favorite answers here is actually Tyrant Kabuterimon, where the deck is pretty much mono green, and that makes it really difficult for your opponent to make their Velgrmon really big. And the fact that he can just redirect and already has huge DP himself means he's really problematic for this deck. You can also get really creative with some of your answers here. When you take things like, for example, Imperial Dramon, you can use the BT16 Imperial Dramon Dragon mode to actually suspend their tamer and then force it to stay suspended so they can't attack with it the following turn. You can also just play into the Velgrmon's effect, where if you don't really have much on board and they force you to mill cards, and your deck actually wants to be milled, it's not such a bad thing. Take, for example, someone like Fenrir Lugomon, who actually wants to get cards set up in the trash. If your opponent's milling cards, then that's only helping you. And so as long as you can collect the pieces you need when you need them, you should be okay. And I'm sure there's many more examples you can pull from here, but you can see that with just these, you have quite a few answers already at your disposal. And so that's going to pretty much wrap this video up. I just thought this was a really cool concept for a deck, and I thought I'd share with you folks out there. Again, it's becoming really popular out here in Asia, and I'm sure it's going to be just as popular, if not more, over in the West. I gave a lot of examples of how to fight against it, but if you've got some ideas of your own that I didn't mention, definitely put them in the comments below. I'm sure other folks watching this video or reading down there would love to know as well. Anyways, happy looping. I'm gonna get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.